Hey friends, welcome to the Kingdom of Pinfall. I'm Michelle, your host, guide, and fearless leader, and we are on an alternate universe wrestling fanfiction adventure. This is actually the second time I am recording this episode because there was a mishap with my cloud storage that I don't want to discuss. I could be a little bitch about it and blame Windows 10, but it was my fault because I am an idiot. It's probably for the best. I had a very hard time with the accents in this episode. This is Chapter 7, and you're going to need to begin your journey with me at Chapter 1, which is Episode 1. Everything's pretty straightforward. And my link tree for art and other goodies can be found in the episode description. There will be some stickers available from the Kingdom of Pinfall Etsy shop soon. And there's a ton of content already on my Patreon, including coloring pages. There's lots of work in progress posts and some other stuff. Plus, you can read these chapters early before the podcast airs if you like to read. If people do that anymore, do people read? I don't know. And the lowest patron tier is a mere $1. So, please, $1 a month, come on. Throw some money my way. Please. This chapter is fairly innocuous, I think. It contains some strong language and me doing really horrible accents. Let's go. Chapter 7, BlissCross Journey to the Forgotten Lands of Nitro, Part 1. Alexa and Nikki decide they won't stay in a hotel on the first night of their travels. Not that they would come across one in the remote area of the realm of Ra that they found themselves in. It was nearly nightfall when they finally made their way out of parts unknown. There is a road in the lightly forested area, but it looks like it hasn't been used in years, maybe decades, maybe longer. Neither of them can tell. They begin to follow it because it leads vaguely north, and that's the way they want to go. I didn't really want to set up camp in parts unknown. Alexa lets out a sigh of relief as she pulls out their map. She flips it over several times and squints at it. I think we're somewhere here, she shows Nikki. This road isn't on the map, I guess because no one uses it anymore because it leads to parts unknown and then stops? Or maybe it used to connect to that road that went through that town? Maybe we can find some old maps in the Forgotten Lands. There's got to be other loot there for the taking, right? Probably. Nikki nods her head, enthusiastically in agreement with everything Alexa said. Let's keep going and set up camp after nightfall. We should try to cover as much ground as possible, Alexa tells her. She continues moving up the road, hovering about a foot off the ground, her wings sparkling in the fading sunlight. They give off a faint glow of their own as well. She folds the map and tucks it away. Nikki watches the trees for any movement, although without belts they aren't really targets, unless their enemies have gotten wind of their grander mission and aim to stop them from reaching the ancient contracts. Alexa doubts this, but Nikki is much more cautious. Nikki had very much been right about stopping at the hotel on their way to the New Day's safe house. And Alexa considers acknowledging this, but then decides against it. She isn't entirely sure why she does this. They don't speak much. Alexa leads the way, emanating a bit of light that proves useful after the sun has completely set. Nikki makes sure no one is following them. They're both tired. There's a clearing up ahead, Alexa points. We can camp there unless you have some reason to object. I'll check it out, Nikki says, and moves ahead of her to investigate the small area slightly off of the disused roadway. It's not a large clearing, but is large enough for their tent. Nikki looks around, wandering a bit farther into the trees. There's no sign of anyone. No lights, no sounds that are out of the ordinary, just crickets, frogs, and night birds. She begins pitching the tent, and Alexa gets out the map again. Alexa doesn't like camping very much. For a forest sprite, she doesn't care for the forest, which is why she does not live in the forest with the rest of her kind. As Nikki tries to get the tent set up and Alexa stares confusedly at the map, Charlotte comes swooping down silently from the sky and lands on Nikki's shoulder. Nikki lets out a blood-curdling scream, drops the tent stakes, and begins swatting at the bird. Alexa lets out a startled yell, unsure what's happening, and then covers her mouth so as not to alert anyone nearby on the off chance someone is actually nearby. But it doesn't really matter because Nikki is shrieking vulgarities mixed with thickly accented gibberish. "Fucking shitbird, gonna break your fucking wings, piece of shit!" The Scotswoman is screaming at the top of her lungs. "Nikki, it's Charlotte, stop," Alexa realizes. "She's fucking attacking me!" Nikki continues her string of loud profanities. The bird flaps its wings and beats Nikki's face, then takes flight again and lands nearby, transforming into the tall blonde woman. She's chuckling slightly, but looks a bit worse for wear. "You're not as funny as you think you are," Nikki says bitterly and picks up the stakes to continue setting up the tent. Charlotte leans against the trunk of a tree at the edge of their little clearing and her laughter subsides. She watches Nikki struggle with the tent and then touches her bleeding lip. Alexa eyes her curiously and then sends an orb of light to hover over Nikki so she can see what she's doing with the tent since moonlight isn't getting the job done. She then looks back at Charlotte and asks, "What are you doing here?" "Checking on your progress," she answers, and then looks down at her arm and frowns. "What happened to you? I feel like you want me to ask." "Doesn't make any difference to me whether you ask or not," she tells her as a bit of light comes from her fingertips and begins to heal the hole in her bicep. It can't heal the hole in her robe as that requires a tailor. "I had a little run-in with the Kingdom of Pinfall's favorite champion, Becky Lynch, since you so kindly informed me that Asuka is looking for her." "Looks like she kicked your ass again. That bodes well for her joining us to fight the forces of evil," Nikki says snarkily from where she's working on the tent still. She pays no mind to Nikki and speaks to Alexa. "If you time your progress accordingly, and if I know Becky as well as I think I do, you'll run into her tomorrow on your way north." She shrugs. "She may or may not join you, assuming she's still alive. I'm sure she is. I'm starting to think she might be immortal. But I digress. At the very least, you may be able to expose her to the reality of the impending WrestleMania. I think it would be wise not to mention our shaky alliance, of course." "You said earlier not to concern ourselves with Becky," Alexa reminds her. She answers as if this is completely unimportant. "I changed my mind. The whole point of us going north was that we can go without drawing attention." Nikki also points out, "She's got belts." Charlotte shrugs. "Why do I get the feeling we're your pawns for some sort of bigger plan?" asks Nikki, turning to look at her accusingly. "Because you are," she tells her flatly, then crosses her arms. "Don't even think about challenging her for either of her belts." "Why would we?" Alexa starts to ask. "She wants them for herself," Nikki interrupts. Charlotte rolls her eyes. "I was just saying to resist the temptation. The draw of the belts of power has gotten stronger as the forces of evil grow stronger. Also, the SmackDown women's belt is cursed, so let Becky keep it." "I've had that belt. How is it cursed?" Alexa asks. She looks at her and visibly contemplates whether or not to tell her. Her brow furrows, and a few moments later she says, "Some of the belts require a trade, or a sacrifice of sorts, in order to use their power. That belt is one of them. Let Becky keep it. She's made the trade already. No need for either of you to do it." Nikki and Alexa both look at her doubtfully, then Nikki pulls some rations from her pack for her and Alexa. She doesn't offer anything to Charlotte except another question. "What all do you know about the belts of power, since you know so much, since you're the daughter of a god?" She squints at Nikki in the dim light and says, "The resent is really not necessary." She sighs and then goes on. "I only know about a few anyway. The 24/7 belt of power grants the holder super speed and endurance, which R-Truth has utilized quite well. He's made a decent messenger so long as the messages are simple." She pauses, not extremely interested in this conversation. "The universal belt of power, which is unfortunately in the possession of the Fiend, absorbs the magic of everyone defeated by its holder." Holy shit, Alexa and Nikki both say in unison. It's been a while since it belonged to someone that actually used its power. A few here and there have used the powers of the belts on accident, which is what Becky is doing with her belts. She thinks it's all her, and she doesn't believe in any of this. As I said, the SmackDown Women's Belt of Power requires a sacrifice. Her voice trails off, and she shakes her head. After a sacrifice is made, the holder is given the power of regeneration. Pair it with the Raw Women's Belt of Power, which gives the holder the power of suggestion, mind control basically, and you have the present state of Becky Lynch, who was already a painfully stubborn piece of shit, and now she's basically unstoppable and everyone fucking adores her. Charlotte pauses again. She clears her throat, making sure both of them are still paying attention, and to her disappointment, they are. The belts you two idiots had grant the wearers some limited chronokinesis. The SmackDown men's tag belts generate a pretty decent shield against damage that is depleted by attacks, but can be recharged and reactivated after. Would have been useful, Nikki mutters. No shit, Sherlock. She uncrosses her arms, and all of the belts can create portals to different places around Pinfall and can open and close the gates to the Pits of Heel, of course. That's all I know. Alexa backtracks. So Becky accidentally made a sacrifice and triggered the powers of the SmackDown Women's Belt of Power? Yes, and this has made her an absolute pain in my ass, she tells them solemnly, bothered that this is what Alexa has chosen to find the most interesting. How is that useful exactly, some of the belts requiring a sacrifice, or a trade or whatever? Charlotte looks at her without expression. The belts were created for the first champions who fought in the first WrestleMania, and many of them in the subsequent WrestleManias. They were the best at whatever they did and the most deserving of the belts, as decided by the Titan of Pinfall. The most powerful belts shouldn't be wielded by just anyone, so they have a little catch is all. The champions must be willing to make sacrifices during a WrestleMania. Am I correct? What did Becky trade? Nikki asks abruptly. Charlotte then turns to her and smirks. I have other places to be and no time to tell stories. She walks up to Alexa's floating ball of light and extinguishes it in her hand, casting them in darkness. Their eyes adjust, and the moonlight prevents pitch blackness. Charlotte remains standing in the center of their small camp for a moment before she adds, Before I forget, Liv Morgan is Sister Abigail. Bray Wyatt's sister? Nikki questions. A nun, actually. Maybe Bray Wyatt's sister, too. Who knows? I think she can turn people into zombies or something. She may have killed the Iconics, but I don't know for sure. With that, she transforms again into the Raven and vanishes into the dark night sky. The two of them exchange a confused glance and then crawl into their tent and arrange their respective sleeping bags. Nikki breaks the silence. They say Charlotte and Becky were friends once. Yes, says Alexa. Do you suppose that was what Becky traded? Nikki rolls over to look at her and whispers. Go to sleep, Nikki, she tells her firmly. Or maybe it was Charlotte's, Nikki suggests, still talking. Becky doesn't even know she made any sort of exchange. Alexa sighs and says again, Go to sleep, Nikki. Aren't you curious? She persists. No, I'm tired, she responds. Now go to sleep. We have a long way to go. Save your curiosity for morning. We'll need something to talk about while we're walking for 12 hours. Good night, Lexi, Nikki says with a sigh, then rolls back over. Alexa lies awake for a long time, thinking about exactly what Nikki mentioned. Alexa believed that both of Nikki's theories were possibly correct. She knew the stories of Becky well. She also knew the stories of Bray Wyatt, the current holder of the Universal Belt of Power. She shudders at the thought. The next morning, the two of them are awoken at sunrise by birds making a celebratory-sounding ruckus. Nikki doles out rations again, and Alexa asks her, You wouldn't turn on me for a belt of power, would you? Of course not, Blissy, she answers without hesitation. Can't you see into my soul or whatever that secret fairy magic of yours is? Alexa laughs. Yes, I was just double-checking, making sure my sprite magic still works. We're gonna get our tag belts back, Nikki says optimistically. You're not gonna try to fight Becky and turn on me, though, are ya? God, no. We need Becky on our side in the WrestleMania, and that would also screw that up. She laughs some more. Aye, Nikki agrees. Now let's get going and see if we can find her. Alexa gives her a nod. Pack up the tent and I'll scout a bit. Nikki does not argue in the slightest, and Alexa flutters up above the overgrown road they've been traveling. She sees an expanse of green treetops, and in the distance behind them, parts unknown. She looks at her map, and if they keep going north and vaguely east, they should hit one of the tributaries of the SummerSlam River, which will take them to the river, which they can follow to the Hall of Fame. It looks like the old road leads in that direction. The Forgotten Lands of Nitro are somewhere north of the walls of Jericho, which mark the northernmost boundary of Pinfall. "Blissy!" Nikki calls up to her. "Yeah?" "Let's go," she says. "You unpitched the tent a lot faster than you pitched it." She points out and looks down. "Well, it was dark and Charlotte was attacking me." "She wasn't attacking you. I think she landed on you and then you attacked her." Nikki looks at her with a bit of suspicion and she adds, "Don't look at me like that. I don't trust her, per se. She doesn't want Pinfall destroyed, and I don't think she's going to kill us. At least not at the moment." "That's nice." Nikki begins walking up the road and Alexa remains above. "Becky's more likely to attack us than Charlotte," Alexa then says. "She's used to everyone coming after her belts constantly, so you can't really blame her, but yeah. What if Charlotte has sent us to run into Becky so Becky kills us?" Nikki muses. "Good God, stop. Just give her the benefit of the doubt for 2 seconds. Nikki grunts, slightly displeased, and then says, "Charlotte gives really vague instructions, even when not sending messages with our truth. She talks a whole fucking lot, but never really says much. Let's just keep going the way we're going. I'll keep an eye out. Plus, we'll probably start hearing those voices when we get close to Becky. We won't miss her unless Charlotte is totally wrong." "She was wrong about us getting to the safe house?" Nikki feels the need to remind her. "Clairvoyance isn't a perfect science, and this isn't clairvoyance. She actually saw Becky yesterday." "There you go, defending her again." Alexa glares down at the other woman, but she's not looking up. She's walking merrily down the road. I'm just saying. Before the first WrestleMania, all of the 4 realms were completely independent, and they came together to fight the forces of evil and become the Kingdom of Pinfall after. "Yeah, we all know the bedtime stories, Lexi," Nikki responds with a bit of attitude. "What I'm saying is that a WrestleMania can cause unlikely alliances to be formed for the good of Pinfall. Quit being dense." "Sorry," she apologizes. "It's fine," Alexa tells her. They go on for a while quietly, with Nikki humming a jolly tune and Alexa alternately looking at the map and scanning the landscape for signs of movement that could be Becky. Nikki breaks the silence and says, "Do you think Charlotte knows more than she's telling us?" "Oh, totally," Alexa answers without any sort of pretense. Then she tells her, "It looks like our road tapers off in a few miles, and we'll run into one of the creeks that feed into the SummerSlam." "What if we don't find Becky? Do we just keep going north?" Nikki questions. "Yes, Becky is a bonus objective." At that moment, a crossbow bolt goes whizzing by her cheek and she exclaims, "Who the hell?" She scans the trees below her in the direction it came from, not entirely sure what it even was. She sees nothing and drops down onto the ground next to Nikki. She grabs her and pulls her to the opposite side of the road and into the bushes. She whispers, "Someone just shot something at me." She points, "From that way." "Want me to kill him?" Nikki asks eagerly. "Maybe? We should probably make sure it's not Becky. Who else would be out here in the middle of nowhere?" "She shot at ya!" Nikki growls angrily. Alexa slaps her hand over Nikki's mouth and quickly shrouds them in a camouflaging aura as they crouch partially behind a tree and in a bush. She watches closely for movement on the opposite side of the road. There's some rustling that sounds a bit larger than a squirrel, and then a yell. "Hey! I didn't shoot you, did I?" Nikki mumbles something into Alexa's palm that she ignores as she stands and questions, "Becky? Bliss?" Becky asks from somewhere in the trees across from them, and then again, "Did I shoot you?" "Almost," she answers and drops the aura. "It was not on purpose." She sounds sincere enough, and then Alexa sees her in the distance walking toward her voice. Her face has some blood on it. Her leg appears to have an open wound, and one of her hands is mangled. Alexa wonders if Charlotte did this to her. If so, Charlotte was the clear winner of their encounter. Becky continues talking as she approaches cautiously. "You see, I acquired this crossbow, and I have no skill with ranged weapons, and I've also got this injured hand. She raises the dirty, bloodied mess with its crooked fingers that have chunks of flesh literally hanging off of them. Then she pauses to struggle with a plant that's caught in her stockings. She swats at it with the crossbow until she manages to get free, then goes on. I'm not any good with ranged weapons is what I'm saying. I didn't think it would be too hard, but then I didn't mean to pull the trigger, but this hand, you see. You probably shouldn't have had a bolt loaded, Alexa says condescendingly and with a cringe. She can't take her eyes off of Becky's hand. Nikki gets up and stands next to her defensively. Yeah, well, I wanted to have one loaded just in case I needed to shoot someone since I had it. She makes it out into the overgrown road, then stops a safe distance away to look at Alexa. You don't happen to have seen a certain unpleasant witch around that likes to think she's a queen, have you? She's about yay tall. She makes a point to use her wounded hand to indicate Charlotte's height, amused that it bothers Alexa. Charlotte? Nikki asks and starts to say yes, but Alexa elbows her in the stomach. Becky raises an eyebrow at them and clarifies. She didn't do this to me, if that's what you're thinking. I think she may have been trying to help me, for old time's sake or something else she's up to. Becky looks around at their surroundings and adds, Getting the hell beat out of me by Liv Morgan dressed as a nun got me feeling a little sentimental, so I'm trying to find her. I can't ever find her when I want her, but damn if she doesn't show up to be a thorn in my side whenever I think she's gone for good. No, we haven't seen her. Alexa lies and grabs onto Nikki's wrist. She tries to obscure that she's doing this so not to draw suspicion to their dishonesty. Do you need a bandage or a potion or anything for your hand? She wonders where the supposed regeneration magic from the SmackDown women's belt is. Becky looks them over and nonchalantly answers, Nah, it'll be fine. Where's your belts? Kabuki warriors, Alexa tells her. Ah, she nods. I hear Asuka's looking for me. Then she asks, What are you doing out here on one of the old roads to WrestleMania? Alexa, curious about this new information, questions, Old road to WrestleMania? Yeah, there's a bunch of them running all through Pinfall. Some are completely overgrown now, but they lead to the fields of WrestleMania. She hitches her thumb in the direction that they had been going. We're going to the Forgotten Lands. You're trying to get the ancient contracts. Becky interrupts her answer. She gives her a nod and looks at her confusedly. How do you know about all this? Doesn't everyone know the legends? She asks. Also Charlotte. She used to talk incessantly about WrestleManias and the Forgotten Lands and the belts and all that. There's some weird shit going on in the realms. Referees acting off. I got attacked by the Iconics who didn't even want me belts. Liz said some really wild stuff. I don't know if I think this is all leading to a WrestleMania or not, but something is definitely going on. I guess you're some of the ones that believe in all that nonsense. You're a bit slow to the party, Nikki blurts out. The Irish woman shrugs dismissively. How about I come with you to get the contracts? I'd like to see 'em for myself. Touch some legendary artifacts with my own two hands. This took no convincing at all, and Alexa says, Yeah, sure, we could use some muscle. I'm the muscle, Nikki says with a startled gasp. More muscle, she corrects quickly. Becky raises her eyebrow at them again, but doesn't comment. She looks at the crossbow, then takes a few steps closer and extends it out to Alexa. Here, I don't want this thing. Plus, it's out of bolts now that I accidentally shot the last one at you. Don't challenge for either of my belts. I'd hate to have to kill people trying to save Pinfall from the forces of evil. That's your goal, right? She withdraws her offer of the crossbow. You're not the bad guys. You're the ones trying to save the kingdom. Nah, not the bad guys, Nikki answers. I think we're on the right side, says Alexa, but King Corbin and his court are also trying to save Pinfall. But they attacked the New Day and took their belts, so... if you're fighting over who gets to be the hero, then you're not the heroes, I don't think. But what the hell do I know? Becky hands her the crossbow, and Alexa gets a look at her broken fingers that don't look quite as bad as she thought. That or they healed some as they stood there talking, which meant that Charlotte was telling the truth. She glances down at Becky's wounded thigh, and it doesn't seem wounded at all, just bloody. Alexa finally releases her grip on Nikki and takes the weapon. She looks it over. It's elaborately carved, and looks like it was once painted yellow and red, but almost all of the paint has rubbed off. There are still bits of paint trapped in the recesses of some of the engravings. Her brow furrows deeply. Where did you get this? Liv had it, she tells her. Liv is Sister Abigail. You can tell that from a crossbow, Becky asks in disbelief. Yeah, she lies. She does recognize the crossbow, though. At least she thinks she does. She needs to confirm. She flings it over her shoulder and flies above them to say, We're stopping by the Hall of Fame. I'll get some bolts there, and maybe you can shower, Becky. Am I that dirty? She asks her with even more disbelief. Can I look at your hand? Nikki asks Becky, fascinated. Becky shrugs and holds it out to her as they walk along northward. Tune in next Tuesday for Chapter 8. The New Day, the Bard, and the Storm Giant. Guess who the Bard is? It's easy. It's someone from SmackDown. Hint, hint, hint. And it also contains a song I wrote. Will I sing it? I don't know. You'll have to tune in next week to find out. Holy shit. It is super hard to switch between accents. And I think I made Nikki Irish for a minute there. I don't know yet. We'll find out when I go back over the recording. Also, my neighbor's car alarm started going off. I'll try to edit it out as much as possible. I don't know if it can be heard in the recording. My mic is pretty powerful. Also, the cat meows. I'll try to get rid of those as well as I can. That's it. I think that is all I have to say. Thank you for tuning in, and this chapter was really important. I know nothing super exciting happened, but it was super important. Thank you, and goodbye.